Springfield gets a superhero from the most unlikeliest of citizens. Here's a look at the brand new Super7 The Simpsons Ultimates Bartman. As seen on The Simpsons, Bartman may not be Bart's most elaborate disguise, but certainly one of the most memorable. This 7-inch scale, highly articulated Simpsons Ultimates Bartman figure features premium detail and comes with interchangeable heads and hands and a variety of other accessories, including a skateboard, Radioactive Man comic, and Santa's Little Helper figure. Hey, yo, what's happening, dude? I'm the guy with the rep for being rude. Okay, we're not going to sing the rest of the Bartman. Besides, I've always had more of a preference for Deep, Deep Trouble. Just before, of course, we get a closer look at the new Simpsons Ultimates Bartman, the tape measure, in fact, is telling us that the figure is only about 4.5 inches in height, or Bartman's about 11.5 centimeters tall. Obviously, with these reviews, the opinions are only my own, but I feel like we have sort of the same problem as we had with Deep Space Homer, in that we actually get a Simpsons family member, but they're not just dressed in their casual clothing. Does that mean we'll get a Bart maybe 5-6 waves from now that's going to actually just be regular Bart Simpson? Or they're going to cancel the line before we actually end up seeing that happen? Now, I know many of you have weighed in your opinions when we had to look at Deep Space Homer, had said, like, we've already gotten Simpsons characters from other toy companies. Yes, we have, but they're not going to be scaled like these ones. You could easily bring in one from Playmates, but, I mean, obviously it's not going to be the same size of character. I would just like to get a Super 7 release of a regular Bart Simpson. One, at least, that was casually dressed, at least in Springfield. Here's what the figure as well looks like with Moe. While not being a regular Bart Simpson, at least Super 7 pack a lot of accessories in these. One of my favorite episodes of The Simpsons, in fact, is when Martin, Milhouse, and Bart go to buy Radioactive Man #1 for $100, and not having enough money separately. They all sort of collectively join together and they end up sharing the comic. Well, we know how that ends up working. Speaking of issue #1 of Radioactive Man, you do get the issue, and luckily you don't have to pay the $100 to get it. Although with the price of these Super 7 figures, these are all like about $55 online US. So already they're getting pretty close to $100. The book itself does look good. Of course, you got the printing in there of Radioactive Man on the front. Nothing really on the back. It would be nice if they had thrown in some ads or something that you would normally see on the back of comics. And of course, you've got the pages on the inside. That's a pretty thick comic, even by back in the 80s standards. The book, unfortunately, doesn't open up or anything like that, but I mean, not that necessarily needed to either. If you have already seen the episode, I don't want to be obviously spilling the beans, but I mean, come on. The episode came out in the 80s. I'm sure by now everybody's already seen it. Unfortunately, the fate of the comic is that it ends up getting thrown out the window outside the treehouse. The dog rips it up. It ends up getting shot by lightning. And eventually it finds its way embedded inside the bird's nest. You can't quite make out what it actually says, but it does say, well, the world is safe again, but for how long? Obviously, you wouldn't be able to see that. It'd probably be a little easier to see it in the actual episode. There's a bird still there. He doesn't have any little birdlings that he has to be feeding it with worms, but again, you've got what's left behind, at least, of the $100 comic inside the nest. A nice little touch. I don't even know really what I'm going to be doing with this. I mean, like, what am I going to do with a bird's nest? I mean, it's a reference to the episode, but realistically, we have to be practical about all these things. What am I really going to do with a bird that's inside of a nest? I'm just going to put it off to the side. The figure as well comes included with the skateboard. The skateboard's nice. I mean, it does have actually real functioning wheels, so it can roll back and forth. You may already notice that it does have a peg on the top. I don't know if this is actually the same skateboard as the one that came included with Poochie. I don't think it is, but it plugs onto the other side of Bart Simpson's feet. So, of course, you can have him roller skating his way around. Nice little roller skate. Nice little included accessory. Now, we've already... looking at all the other things, I mean, obviously, they're just hands and then the slingshot. I guess the biggest thing we could also talk about is the fact that Bart actually comes included with Santa's Little Helper. It's nice. The thing about it, though, is while it does depict sort of the last ending life of what's left of at least Radioactive Man #1, he rips it to shreds, and then again, like the lightning hits it. I do wish, though, that this figure could have come included with an alternate head sculpt, too. I would imagine if we eventually get ourselves a Bart down the road, hopefully the line doesn't get canceled by then, that we're probably going to be getting, wouldn't it just be the case that we get ourselves another Bart Simpson and then we get ourselves another Santa's Little Helper? I feel like we could really stop right there, meet somewhere in the middle, and not just release this as a Bart Simpson with an alternate Bartman head portrait. They probably could have done something very similar as well to Santa's Little Helper. Instead of just having one always being sculpted, ripping up the actual comic book, Why couldn't they have just included a secondary head port where you just pop this one off, replace it with a rather regular Santa's Little Helper head sculpt, and then you would have just had the option of being able to display the figure on his own. I just don't hope that this is a case that Super 7's going to double dip this figure, because we already know they will. Get a Bart and get ourselves yet another Santa's Little Helper. What are we going to do with two of the dogs? There's articulation at least for the figure where you can rotate it back and forth. Santa's Little Helper also has as well rotation or hinging there on the legs themselves, both back leg. Also, I think the back leg does move. No, it actually is just sculpted the rest of the figure's body. And there's no tail articulation either. So it's really only just the head and it's the front of the legs. I mean, again, like you get yourself a Santa's Little Helper, which is a nice, don't get me wrong, a nice included accessory, but already sort of getting that kind of feeling that Super 7's only just going to double dip this figure again. I just feel like we're going to be getting another Super 7's Santa's Little Helper down the road. Calling it right now. Figure also comes included with this slingshot, which again, a nice little accessory for both Bart and Bartman. The slingshot does have what looks to be already a pulled back elastic, and this does fit into his hands. Although right now, obviously, he's not going to be holding much of anything. He only has just relaxed hands. Don't worry, we'll fix that shortly. The figure comes included with closed fists. We're not going to be fixing it just yet. And then, of course, the figure does have a couple of relaxed hands. Yeah, we're still not going to fix it yet. But the figure also comes included with the cash that he throws over to the comic book guy, which, of course, all three of them then participate in buying the comic collectively. They have to then share it among days, and then they have to then, within those days, Saturday and Sunday, I think they have to decide by numbers. But what about Zero? Yeah, what about Zero? At least you get yourself a little wad of what's left of his money. And, of course, again, I think he wants to offer it $40, and he says no. And again, they all sort of pay together. So you get yourself a little cash, a little stack of money that, of course, that can be displayed in Bart's hands. But the most important thing is the fact that the figure comes also included with gripping hands. We're just going to take the figure as he is right now, and we're just popping the hand off from the provided peg. We're going to obviously take the peg with the hand. Just remove it from his forearm. Then we're going to take the hand, one of the gripping hands at least, pop that into his hand like that. Then we're going to take the slingshot. Slingshot fits fairly easy, in fact, actually, in between his fingers and his thumb. And then we're just going to bend the elbow. Now Bart's got himself this slingshot. Don't worry, we're going to be talking about the belt in a moment. I can already see that you guys are looking at that thinking, boy, that belt's a little loosey-goosey. It is loosey-goosey. Actually, you know what? We'll talk about that right now. We're going to take this all out. We're going to put all the accessories off to the side. We're going to also talk about the head sculpts also more in a moment. But Bart as Bartman, I mean, obviously you get yourself three different head portraits. All of them have varying expressions. The one that I did want to sort of start things off is sort of more of a neutral expression. Nice looking portrait for Bart. The thing about it, though, is let's just say, we're going to pop the head off here. He comes included with a cape, and I'll say right away, like the cape isn't matching the color at all for his head. His head's actually supposed to be a little bit more, at least the mask that he has actually is more closer to purple, and yet they arrived on the idea of giving him actually more of a blue cape. It really should be like a purple cape and a purple cowl. Anyways, if you were to remove all of those, and then you remove his utility belt, this thing. Utility belt sits... Like if you line everything flush and you kind of bring it down as far as it's going to go, providing all those things get checked off, then the utility belt stays fine on him. The moment any one of those get misaligned, then all of a sudden you got this loose utility belt that just flops around. It actually kind of looks like there's an old controller there on the front. Okay, so let's remove this as well. And you probably can already see where I'm going with this. If we take off all the things that identify him as Bartman, and if you leave just the body alone, obviously we have, some Bartman head sculpts still to work with. Couldn't they have not simply just released this as a Bart figure and then just giving us maybe like an alternate head sculpt for a Bartman, maybe even giving us either one or two different heads for Bartman, or even giving him one and then just giving a couple of different portraits for Bart. They literally could have, instead of releasing two figures, met it in the middle and not just released this as a Bart with then an alternate portrait here for Santa's Little Helper. And then, of course, all the stuff that would... I mean, like, with the comic only being the thing that references back to Radioactive Man, everything else, essentially, other than maybe just the nest, is all things that really could have also been packed along with Bart. Anyways... What's also interesting about the utility belt, where I just happen to move off to the side here, is that in the actual episode where he goes to the convention, I think it's the same episode that he meets Adam West. How come Batman doesn't dance anymore? Remember the Bat-2C? Ow, ow. In that episode, I don't believe he's actually even got a utility belt. All he really has is the cape, which again is purple, it's not blue. And of course, he's wearing basically this outfit. So we just pop everything back in place. This really should be the way he looks. I'm trying to actually arrive on which episode he's actually got himself a utility belt. Not to say it hasn't been the case, but when I ever think of Bartman, I always just think of him looking like this. He does also have a couple of different head sculpts in there. Obviously, this is just the one that we started things with. He also comes with one that kind of gives more the arrived expression that kind of he's happy that he just got himself the comic. And then there's this one where he sees where the comic has ended up onto the ground, and Sans Little Helper has chewed it to bits. Lightning has hit it, of course, and the bird made a nest of it later on. This head sculpt's good, but again, I think really if given the choice, I probably would just end up displaying the figure with the smile instead. And it's just a case, again, of you pop the head off, you put it back onto the ball joint. We all sort of know by now how ball joints work. Just pop it in place, and now you've got Bart with now the smiling face. Again, could we not have just done this as a Bart release? And again, it's probably going to be like 3-4 waves down the road. They're going to finally give us another Bart. And I'm sure they're probably going to also deliberately give him a different shirt. So the whole idea in mind is obviously you'd be able to swap the heads around. So if you want to use like the orange shirt instead, maybe the other Bart's going to probably be a blue shirt. And then just, again, you'd be able to mix and match the parts. I don't know. I just feel like we're just essentially getting a figure that we know we're already getting, and they could have easily just done all of it now, just all of it in this singular release. What's interesting also about the cape, by the way, is luckily, first of all, it hasn't stained anything on the figure, because that was one of the biggest worries I had, was that the blue from the cape would eventually find its way to stain the back of the shirt. Doesn't seem to be the case. It hasn't stained the arms either. There is a wire that runs here. There's a wire that runs here. There's a wire that runs in the middle. Actually, there isn't one in the middle. It's only just on the sides. But you can at least angle the cape if you want a little bit more of a dynamic superhero pose to that. Head sculpt, again, like on all of them, is really well painted. This one being, again, my favorite of the three. I just, again, wish that the cape was a little bit more closer in color. Like, you can see it's somewhat close, but it really should honestly be kind of a little bit more of a purple color for this, and it should be a lot more purple, obviously, for the cape. For the rest of the figure's body, it's pretty much just standard Bart's. So, I'm not going to say any more of it. I'm not going to say anything else about it. What we'll do instead, we'll talk about the articulation. So like Bart, if I can get it all the way onto the ball joint, it's going to be on a ball joint, so it does look down really well, actually. It looks up. If we get it all the way on there, it does rotate back and forth, and you can also angle it as well. If you're having, by the way, any problems, like I'm having problems right now getting this onto the ball joint, just, again, heat the inside of the head with like either hot water or a hairdryer. That might make things a little bit easier popping it onto the ball joint. Arms hinge out at about 90 degrees. They probably could, I would imagine, maybe even go a little higher than that. There is a swivel right here, swivel in the elbow. You can bend at the elbow there. You can also rotate the hands all the way around. The legs, or I shouldn't even say like the legs, the waist swivels back and forth. The legs hinge out because they have the ball joints inside there, the thighs. Of course, the legs move forward and back. There's no swivel here at the top of the thigh, but there's at least a swivel here where the kneecap is. You can bend the knee. Then there's the articulation here for the actual feet. Those move back and forth. You can also move them up and down as well. Good Bart, but I feel like I have the problems with the Bart for maybe all the wrong reasons. Sort of the same way I had the problem with Homer. And again, it's only just my own opinions. You probably could have completely different opinions, and hey, that's okay. We're all allowed different opinions. But I feel like, again, like instead of just giving us, Homer's a harder one because obviously he's got himself the astronaut outfit. Homer would be a harder one to pull off. We're giving us obviously just a regular dressed, Springfield version of Homer Simpson. They just decided instead to give us an Astro Homer instead. Deep Space Homer, okay, there's that. But for the fact that Bart literally is just a Bart Simpson body, and then they put a cape over top of it, they slid on awkwardly a utility belt. I just feel like, again, like this figure could have easily done both a Bart and a Bartman as one release. Because again, like all the accessories sure are some referenced to the episodes that have appeared at least with Bartman. But I feel like those could also be accessories specific as well to Bart. Sans Little Helper could have easily come included with 2 head sculpts. Bart could have easily also come included with an unmasked head and then again a couple of different head sculpts for Bartman. And they could have easily done a Bart with basically 2 birds with 1 stone. I know that's a horrible, idea in mind, but 2 birds with 1 stone. They could have also done something similar to Bart, releasing not, in fact, the same figure with just 2 different portraits. And then you could decide for yourself which way you want to display them. I did say 80s, didn't I? I think the Tracy Ullman shorts were probably like the late 80s, and when Simpsons basically went to a solo series, it was kind of the early end of the 90s. This particular episode, by the way, one of my all-time favorites, 3 Men in a Comic Book in which Martin, Milhouse, and Bart all pay in together to get Radioactive Man #1, debuted, in fact, May 9th, 1991. How many of you feel really old? Not only do I feel old by the fact that I actually remember that being on TV for the first time on Fox, but all the subsequent times that episode has aired, every single time I see it on TV, it's one of those episodes I have to watch. I don't really watch Simpsons as much anymore, but that's one of the handful of episodes that if I ever see it, I end up watching it right away. Now, to go back, obviously, to something I talked about in this review, the fact that he has a utility belt that's removable, the fact that he also has a cape that can also be taken off, does beg the question, why couldn't Super 7 have released Bartman as a Bart Ultimate figure and not just included the additional accessories for him to transform into Bartman? I mean, obviously, down the road, I know we're going to be getting ourselves a Bart. The fact that we already get ourselves a Bartman now means that ways from now, Super 7's not just going to release this figure again as Bart. It will bother me if they give him the exact same color of shirt, because you would think that they're probably going to be using the same ball joint for both those figures, that you could just decide for yourself which head sculpt you want to use. If you want to use the Bartman head sculpt for that other Bart that we're going to be eventually getting, or if you want to use that Bart for the other one and just swap it out with this body here, you at least give us, if that's the plan in mind, give us a Bart that's going to have a different color t-shirt, so then you can decide for yourself. If it happens to be the exact same t-shirt and we get ourselves another Santa's Little Helper, shame on you, Super 7. We know exactly why you did that. What do you guys think of Bartman? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you guys had the chance to pick up this figure for yourself? And do you also feel like Super 7 could have at least arrived with doing a Bart first and then just included the Bartman accessories? Or do you like the fact that Bartman is actually a separate release from a Bart we know eventually we're going to get down the road? Let me know down below. If you guys, by the way, are interested in get Bartman for yourself, he is, as right now, he's available at Entertainment Earth. That's where I find this. That's where I found this figure. And backing up, that's also where I found Krusty the Clown. Yeah, we're going to be looking at Krusty the Clown. Hey, in the next review, I did actually find them both there. If you click the link down below that's provided in the video description, that link not only will take you directly to Bartman, but that same link as well will save you 10% on anything that's currently in sight over on Entertainment Earth. So that means if you want to pick up the Bart Simpson, the Bartman, or you want to pick up any of the other Ultimate figures that Super 7 have done so far, if it's in stock provided, you'll save 10% off right away. But again, we are going to be looking at Krusty the Clown. His review will be right around the corner. If in the meantime you guys did enjoy the review here of Bartman, why not throw it a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you're on board to see some more reviews of Super 7, you can also hit that subscribe button down below. That's really good. You can also, hey, turn on the bell notification. And if you want to go back and see some of the ones I've already looked at from Super 7, I mean, that covers off the territory of Silverhawks, Thundercats, Ren and Stimpy. What other things have we looked at? G.I. Joe, Transformers. I think we kind of run the gambit. But popping up at the very end of this video will be a playlist of other things I've looked at from Super 7. Yeah, feel free. Give it that a gander. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.